afternoon.
Good afternoon. It has been a weekend.
I think you need to speak up.
Really?
Yeah,
I've got my microphone right here.
Or maybe I need to turn my volume up.
Okay, now I don't feel so bad.
Yeah, no, it's me. It's me. So,
it's been a weekend.
It's
been a weekend.
And I never really thought about it, but I mean, I feel a sense of deja vu when we're now talking about LA riots again. As somebody who lived through the whole, well, not lived through, but who was around during the time of the
Rodney King
and everything like that happening in LA, this kind of feels like LA riots is, does every generation get their own little LA riots? But,
or something. But I mean, the thing though is that like when I think of when I think about what's happening in LA right now, I mean, LA has been declared a sanctuary city by Governor Gavin Newsom. We knew that, sanctuary city. Yeah, sorry, whatever I said, sanctuary. And that was months ago that he declared it. But the fact that ICE is still being sent in there, I think, I mean, you want to talk overreach. That's that right there.
Okay,
no, go ahead.
I was just thinking that maybe we should just back up a little bit and just put some context about what we're talking about. Yep. For anybody that's not really understanding what's going on. Basically, there's situations in LA where people are protesting, and usually what would happen is if things got out of control, which they did during the LA riots of Rodney King days, the governor would request that the National Guard come in. In this case, the governor is saying, we don't want the National Guard. And Trump said, you're going to get the National Guard. And apparently he did that under what's called a Title 10, which is a U.S. Code on Armed Services. It says that the president is able to bypass local government officials to send in the troops if there is a rebellion or danger of a rebellion against the authority of the government of the U.S., which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
Also, he has authorized the Secretary of Defense, Peter Signalgate Hegseth, to employ any other members of armed forces as necessary to augment and support the protection of federal functions in any way, in any number deemed appropriate. So, and Trump also mentioned that he might even send in the Marines, which apparently is against international laws. But
now here's something though. Now I know I didn't mention this to you, and I don't know if you read up on it, but there is a law. It's called the Posse Comitatus Act, and the Posse Comitatus Act bars federal troops from participating in civilian law enforcement except when expressly authorized by law. This 143-year-old law embodies an American tradition that sees military interference in civilian affairs as a threat to both democracy and personal liberty. However, recent events have revealed dangerous gaps in the law's coverage that Congress must address. So, in British and American law, a posse comitatus is a group of people who are mobilized by the sheriff to suppress lawlessness in the county. In any classic Western film, when a lawman gathers a posse to pursue the outlaws, they are forming a posse comitatus. The Posse Comitatus Act is so named because one of the things it prohibits is using soldiers rather than civilians as a posse comitatus. Now, that's got more to do, as I said, with Who's he what's it? Sending in the Marines, the who's what's it? Yes,
right.
It does not have anything to do with the president essentially overtaking the governor's authority to call in the National Guard. But with Pete Hegseth being told that he now has permission from the president to possibly send in the Marines, that is against that law. And that is dangerous.
Well, the only thing I would say about that is at the very beginning, and I don't have it in front of me, but at the very beginning, you made a comment, or you were reading it and saying against civilian whatever, because they could argue that, well, this isn't a civilian issue because they are confronting ICE, which is a federal. So is it a civilian issue?
Yeah, well, so what it says is the Posse Comitatus Act bars federal troops from participating in civilian law enforcement. Now, ICE is technically not military.
Yeah.
ICE is
Okay.
Homeland Security.
How about we just take a moment and show
Okay.
a little bit of the coverage just to give people a little bit of context and also sort of a feel for it.
Yep.
So here is, just to give you a sense of what's going on. This was taken 24 hours ago, and this is just a piece of it that you can kind of get a sense of what we're talking about.
But I mean, essentially what this says to me, I mean, Americans, particularly in places like California, they're sick and tired of ICE. Shades of Rodney King, shades of Kent State, shades of, oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things that Grace and I had been discussing was the fact that Trump said he's going to make it illegal for protesters to wear masks. And I believe what have they got to hide? Well, as you can see from in there, like, I'd be wearing something to protect my breathing as well. And the ICE agents and whichever military that was, I don't even know what it was. They've got their face masks on, which is their breathing apparatus, and they're doing it because of the breathing and stuff. So, yeah. Anyway.
Well, the fact that their faces are hidden are just a positive side effect for them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But if you notice, I don't know if you noticed it in the video, but there was one of the authorities there that was in the camouflage gear, had his phone up and doing a video, you could tell the way he was moving it. So yeah, they're trying to determine who is there. So anyway.
I mean, this is all like, every time we think that things are just getting worse and worse since Inauguration Day. And just when you think it couldn't possibly get worse, it gets worse. Because now they're attacking civilians.
But I think the thing that bothers me the most is that there is going to be a large portion of Americans who think this is okay.
Yeah, I know.
And they will rationalize it to themselves that ICE was doing their job. Civilians got in the way. They had to control them. etc. But one of the things is, if you stand back and you actually take a look at things, it really started. Trump announced that they were, or it was mentioned that Trump was considering cutting back, making substantial cuts to federal granting for California. And in response, and part of the reason why was because California was not following their what their daddy told them, which was regarding trans kids in the schools. And there was a trans girl who went on to win some gold medals and whatever, and that really pissed off the feds. And all of a sudden, you have now ICE comes into the picture. Reaction to the feds being pissed off about the transgender girl, I don't know, but the ICE raids come in. Around the same time of hearing about the cuts and this transgender girl, Gavin Newsom publicly talked about maybe we should be withholding federal funds, federal taxes. California pays in taxes $83 billion a year that they do not receive back from the federal government.
Yep.
And that's per year. So if they withhold the 83 billion, that's going to really piss off the feds. It may not be legal, but it will take a while to go through the courts. In the meantime, the feds aren't getting their money. And it was pointed out that if all the blue states did that, America would come to a screeching halt.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because the blue states, I mean, if you want to make it sort of similar to how things are laid out in Canada, it's like the American version of, why can I not think of the word? Equalization payments. That was the word I was trying to think of. Similar to, you have the have provinces that send money to Ottawa through our taxes. Like, this is just taxes. This is not something special. We already know that. It's just, it comes out of Alberta taxes, comes out of BC taxes, Ontario taxes, and then it gets distributed out to the quote unquote have not provinces like Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, etc. Similar idea down in the States. The blue states, they're the ones that have the most money, and they send the most money to Washington so that it can be distributed to states like Mississippi and Alabama, etc.
Yeah, idea. Exactly. So he talked about withholding cuts. Then all of a sudden, California is being targeted with ICE raids, and they're being told, get ready, because it's going to be like the next 30 days, they're going to be doing ICE raids. So then people in California start protesting when they see these ICE raids happening, which the protests then caused the National Guard to get called in. So it's like this domino effect that nobody's admitting is tied together. But it was Friday when Gavin Newsom talked about withholding taxes. So yeah, so nobody is saying this is all related, but Gavin Newsom, it was Friday when he announced that they should suggested that they should consider withholding federal taxes. And here we are, it's Sunday, and the National Guard has been called in.
Yeah. And National Guard has not been called in by the governor, but by the president, which is not cool.
It's easy to sit back and say this, but I think it will be an absolute missed opportunity and could be a very strong tactical error if other blue states don't jump in now. Because the feds can only put out so many fires. And if they leave California to deal with this on their own, the results will be much more catastrophic than if there's a bunch of the states.
Yeah. Well, from what I understand, when I started their raids in California, they had also stepped up their raids in New York. And so there were protests in New York, but it's just not getting any attention right now because of the gong show that California is right now. So it's not as if there isn't another blue state. But yes, I think all the blue states should be jumping in right now.
Well,
But I
and
mean, what do
withholding
we
the
know?
tax.
You know, what do we know? We're just a couple of YouTubers.
Shh, never mind. But not just protesting the raids, but the withholding of taxes, because
Yeah.
they will grind the federal government to an absolute halt if they do, and if they start doing that, then the economy is going to get very unstable, and people will start, like, the stock market and whatnot is going to crash again, and bonds and all of that kind of stuff that is
And
going to
yeah.
hit the taco man.
And that's not going to be something that the federal government can do anything about, unlike in the past with the whole, pulling back on tariffs and stuff. Because if the blue states pull their tax dollars from, I keep on wanting to say Ottawa, no, from Washington, then yeah, there's nothing the American federal government can do about that. Like, they can't just suddenly stop doing something and then the markets go back up to the benefit of their wealthy benefactors.
Well, they could do make sure there's no cuts and to the state of California, and they could pull back and not do ICE raids in California, and then they would get their money.
Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah.
But I am, and I've said this before, there's so many Americans, especially online, who are saying it's not all of us. This is the administration. This is Trump, et cetera, et cetera. Don't worry, Canada, we got your back. And you see things like this, and I'm like, you don't have your own back. Those people, those ICE agents, the military, those are all Americans, and they're the ones doing it. Yes, they're doing it under order of Trump. I get that. But I mean, there was Hitler, but then he had the people who did it for him. And that's the same situation here. You've got Trump, and you've got his league of people that he can call on. So how we are supposed to, in Canada, not be concerned about this because the American people got our back and it's not all Americans, doesn't give me any solace.
Absolutely none. Now, for what it's worth, and don't get me wrong, I do not spend an awful lot of time on Threads or Blue Sky. I mean, I have accounts for both of them, but I don't spend an awful lot of time on there. But what I saw last night on Threads and on Blue Sky were people giving instructions on how to go under the radar against ICE, and how to based on the Chinese protests in Hong Kong back in 2019. How did the protesters dress so they couldn't be identified? Like, there's all these tips that that are being posted online about how to prevent from being arrested by either ICE or the National Guard or the whatever. So I mean, you're right. It's very hard not to feel concerned by what's happening down there and how it's going to impact us, because it is absolutely going to impact us. There's no two ways about it. But I think what I am seeing anyway is that the more and more people are getting pissed off, because, like, I mean, you think about it, like what happened, what started it yesterday was just ICE showed up at a Home Depot in Paramount, California, and some people saw them there and they're like, no, we're not going to stand for it anymore. This is crap. And so these are normal, everyday Americans who decided to say, no, we are going to protect our friends. We're going to protect our family. We're going to protect our coworkers. We're not going to put up with this anymore. So it is very slowly happening. And any kind of action does take time to happen. But now that it has exploded in California the way that it has, like, if Washington decides to send in the Marines, it's going to be bad, because people are going to be super pissed off. I mean, because this goes beyond, like, people are going to be seeing, oh my God, they're actually sending the military after us, and this is against the law.
Yeah. Well, and I think that I'm hopeful. I'm very hopeful that there is more going on that we don't know about when it comes to a resistance movement. I have heard rumblings of it, not lately, and I'm hopeful that that's because they're not publicly speaking it. Because one of my other things, I'm getting a little bit concerned for some of the YouTubers who are spreading the word and who are speaking out against Trump, because I think it would be really easy for the government to come
be
after
disappeared, for them to be
all
disappeared.
All you take is one disappearing, and if I was a YouTuber, I'd think twice.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I would not at all be surprised if the resistance has not so much gone underground, but just they're not saying anything, because I think if I were to take a guess, oh, pardon me, they learned a lesson from what happened in Russia 2 weeks ago. I mean, how the hell did Ukraine manage to keep hidden this plan for 18 months before they destroyed $7 billion of Russian planes? 18 months. They kept it secret from everybody, including the American government.
Never mind that. How did Zelensky keep his mouth shut when he was being berated by Trump?
Exactly. So I think that sent a really huge message that social media is great, but we need to keep our plans quiet.
Yeah. Well, and I had respect for Zelensky before, but when this all came down, I'm like, oh, I guess he did have a card to play.
Well, I am looking forward to seeing what's going to happen at the G7 next week. I mean, Zelensky has been invited and he is coming. And I don't know, is Trump going to dare show his face?
Apparently he's coming. That's what I've heard.
Well, let's see what happens then. Because does Trump dare do anything or say anything to Zelensky when he's got the rest of the G7 looking on?
I have this thing where I picture, you go to conferences and then you have all the stuff, you sit in and you listen to people and you talk and you have meetings and all that kind of stuff. I have this rather ridiculous picture of them going down to the cafeteria and Trump sitting all by himself at a table and all the other kids running on the table. And they're smack in the back of Zelensky and they're having a great old time and there's Trump sitting at a table all by
I wish. Well, do you remember that picture from the G7? And I think it was the 2018 the 2017 or 2018 G7. It was being held in Munich. And I just remember that Angela Merkel, like she was leaning against a table, leaning over Trump, and Trump's just sitting there like this.
Yeah.
Well, and all the other G7 leaders are just sort of, like they're standing there, but they're not saying anything.
It's scary times.
It is.
It really is. And the scariest part, like I said, is those people who don't even realize it's scary times.
Well, I unfortunately have some friends down there that are very much Trump supporters. And I don't even talk about this. In fact, I haven't spoken to them since I saw them 2 months ago in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what to say to them. I don't know what to say to them.
I don't know. It defies logic that a group of people who are so pro-American, pro-guns, we need guns to protect ourselves in case the government comes after us. We are pro-Constitution, we put it in the Trump Bible. But yet when Trump is doing things that are actually pissing on the Constitution, they can rationalize it. I don't get it. In my research, as I'm looking at videos and stuff, I made a mistake looking at some of the comments. And it was like, oh, way to go, basically telling, put those people from LA in their place, and you know, get rid of those illegal aliens. And it was just,
Mm-hmm.
they totally don't get it. And I don't understand the cognitive, I'm having trouble.
Cognitive dissonance.
Thank you, that it takes to keep yourself in that state.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was on Facebook last night and I was on a friend's thread. And I mean, he is very much against what's going on and that kind of stuff. And of course, one of his friends popped on to comment, and good for them, etc. And then he went on about how, you know, these illegal immigrants, like what they're doing in Beaumont. I'm thinking to myself, Beaumont? What the hell's happening in Beaumont? And for anyone who doesn't know, Beaumont is another satellite community out in the capital region of Edmonton, in the same way as Sherwood Park, Spruce Grove, Stony Plain, St. Albert,
Yeah,
small town. And apparently there have been some new houses that are like, you know, new home builders building in Beaumont, and some of those new homes are being burned down and they're being blamed on illegal immigrants. And I'm just like, what? Where the hell did that come from? And so the comment then became that my friend in question was just saying, you know, I mean, this is not about, like, absolutely, if people are doing things that are illegal, then by all means they need to be arrested, they need to be punished for it, no question there. But to tag it all on quote unquote illegal immigrants, when, as a for example, it's an open secret that some of these home builders are hiring illegal immigrants to do the building because they get paid less and they keep their mouths shut because they want to keep their jobs. And so maybe some of them have gotten pissed off and so burned down those new buildings. Is that illegal? Absolutely. Should they be punished? Yes, but they should be punished because they did something illegal, not because they're here in the country illegally.
Which will be a good segue into our next video, which is going to be about Bill C-2.
Yes, absolutely.
But on that note, did you have anything you wanted to say as sort of a wrap up, or?
Not really, other than the fact that it's going to be a very interesting week south of the border. It's going to be a very interesting week south of the border. I mean, we could also go into the deteriorating bromance between Trump and Musk that happened last week, but that's nothing compared to what's going on right now. It was funny and we laughed about it, but in the grand scheme of things,
what do you call that when it's the humor during dark time? It was like a black humor kind of broke the tension because it was just so ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. Black humor is a good way to describe it as any. Absolutely.
Yeah. Little bromance and the memes that came out of it.
Yes, the memes were absolutely hysterically funny.
Well, the one that I liked the most, which I will get my phone because it cracked me up. I actually shared it because it was just so apropos. I thought, oh, isn't that the truth? So Elon goes, kill the bill. And Trump goes, Elon has Trump derangement syndrome. So Elon goes, I'm the reason Trump won. So Trump goes, we waste billions on Elon. So Elon goes, Epstein. And a flunky goes, deport. And Elon goes, impeach. And that's why women are too emotional to be president.
Yep. I saw that one. That one. Yep.
But yeah, there's all kinds of fun little AI videos and all kinds of things out there. But
yeah.
Okay, well,
yep, those are hysterical, but and we laughed at them, but right now in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't mean an awful lot.
No, it just shows the instability of things.
Yeah.
You know, to go from having him in the Oval Office with his kid, and it's like, Elon's the best. Elon's the, you know, like, and now it's like a public spat. It's just ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. It is.
Okay.
Yep.
Bye for now.
All righty. Bye all.
Bye-bye.